If you're law enforcement, stop and listen to me right now. If you're a police department that does not have an LPR system, Insight is offering the first 10 agencies, that means one agency apiece, gets one camera for free. You have to tell them that Two Cops, One Donut sent you. You heard me right. If you're a police agency that does not have an LPR system yet, or does have an LPR system, and you're not happy with the product you have, Insight is offering you a free camera. No strings attached, and they will install it. I have 10 to give out. Tell them Two Cops, One Donut sent you, or reach out to me, and I will get you in contact. If you're a business owner or an HOA, please stop and listen to me right now. If you're just listening to the audio, do yourself a favor and watch the YouTube version of this episode to get a visual of what I'm about to tell you. I want to tell you guys about Insight LPR. It's a license plate reader. If your agency, community, or business is looking to invest in LPR to help solve and deter crime or to make your community safer, Insight LPR has my vote of confidence. I've met with their team. They know their LPRs, guys. They're the real deal. They bring over 75 years of collective experience to building LPR cameras and the software that supports communities across the country. The other thing I really like about this team is how much they listen to law enforcement. They understand the importance of working together with law enforcement and getting their input as they build and innovate products and their service to match the needs of law enforcement. In other words, when I complain or have suggestions to make their damn camera better, they actually do it. The Insight LPR team is extremely passionate and takes pride in their product development, which makes their cameras some of the most durable cameras in the market. For the gear nerds out there, what that means is this stuff's made of military grade aluminum and is nitrogen purged, whatever that means. This design makes the cameras rugged and able to withstand harsh weather elements. Here's the big selling point for me. Their nighttime scan accuracy is higher than most of the leading competitors. In my opinion, this is what sets them apart. As we know, the majority of crimes occur at night, so it's critical to have high scan accuracy at night. Insight's cameras check the box with the nighttime plate read accuracy greater than 96%. 96%, guys. That's pretty freaking high. If your community is looking to invest in LPR technology, reach out to one of their experts today or reach out to me. Tell them Two Cops, One Donut sent you. Coming up next on Two Cops, One Donut.
During Floyd and after the Floyd stuff, I saw that there was a need for, building bonds with the community, but I also saw a bigger need internally where, like you talked about earlier, we don't do a great job of training up the next guy up. It most of the time it falls solely on, like in your case, if you're a passionate guy, you go after things, but you and I can agree that that's not always the case with guys and girls that we work with, Yeah. So if they don't have that internal drive, or maybe they do, but they just don't vocalize it as much as you or I do. I mean, nobody's going to ever accuse me of not saying what I feel I need to say type of thing. You know? But I just saw that. I saw how it affected officers, when it came to talking about the Floyd stuff again. And I saw that we talk about this brotherhood, but what are we really doing about it?
All right, welcome back. Two Cops, One Donut. I'm your host, Eric Levine. Today, I have with me a friend, a mentor, all around good cop, in my experience. Maybe not other people's, but Richard Mendoza. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, buddy.
Yeah,
glad to be here.
We finally got you on here.
I know we've been trying for a while.
Yeah, we've talked about this for quite some time. Yeah, I'm just adjusting so I can lean forward. I was giving Rick all the instructions on how the mic works and all that stuff because I told him how over the time he's actually listened to me gripe and complain about all the issues I have with the podcast and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, one of the things is getting people to talk into the mic and how close you really got to be to get good sound out of it and all that. So I was explaining all that stuff, and I think I got you paranoid now.
I know. I'm looking at this thing kind of scared of it. But.
Of all the mics, though, these are the most aesthetically pleasing, in my opinion. Because most of them is just a black, like, foamy thing over top of it. And I think these look cool.
Can you make my voice like Matthew McConaughey's or something? You able to do that?
Let me see. I could actually make your voice. Let's see. We could do... We could both talk like that at the same time. So, I I never use the soundboard. The only person I've really used it with was Spraggins because he kept telling me to hit it. So, because it's got all sorts of fun things you can do. Yeah. I never use it though. This ain't Howard Stern. He ain't trying to do all the soundboard stuff. But, well, sir, so you're, just so people are wanting to know what this episode's going to be about, we're going to talk a little bit about Rick's background, what got him into a life of service when it comes to law enforcement. And then we'll get into the main part, which is going to be mentorship, both professional and spiritually guided through the police department. And we'll get into the specifics. I don't want to speak for his vision that he actually started and got going. So, which is, I think it's going well. I mean, it's definitely grown since we started and all that, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So, first and foremost, sir, are you a Texas native?
I am Fort Worth native.
Okay.
Went to a high school there in Fort Worth. Can I name the high school?
Yeah.
Arlington Heights.
Arlington Heights.
Kind of proud of it because we won a state championship.
Wait a second. It's called Arlington Heights and it's in Fort Worth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why?
There. That's a good question. The neighborhood around it's the Arlington Heights area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's confusing for a non-Texas, especially a person that lives in Arlington.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's right there at like 30 Hewlin.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So you do that. Now, growing up, like you grew up in Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm. I grew up near the stockyards.
Oh, okay. So you
on the north side.
Definitely a cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up there, now what influences did you have that got you into law enforcement? Did you?
It's I have a long lineage of family members that have been at this place for a while, but I think for me it was more, I can say that I honestly had a call to it at an early age. I remember actually writing a paper in high school about wanting to be a police officer. So it's something that I think was calling me, even if I didn't have all the family that I have that have worked for police department.
Yeah, the place we're speaking of, we both worked for, and for a while, his family was basically known as the mafia of the police department. And because when he says he had family there, it wasn't just like my uncle works there. It was like my uncles, my dad, my grandpa, my brothers, my
yeah.
my
I think
cousins.
I lose count, but I think an aunt of mine made us a flag that I keep in my office, and at the time, which was about 5 years ago, and I think one or two family members less, we had almost 250 years of service amongst our family.
Dang, just law enforcement?
Just law enforcement. Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah.
Man, you got us beat big time. I had my dad, and then I've had people in service, but as far as police work goes, I don't know many people past my dad. I don't think I know any. We had military, definitely, firefighters, but not a lot of police.
Yep.
Surprisingly so, being from Flint. Either should have been part of the problem or part of the solution, and not many of them were part of the solution, I guess. All right, so you got all this family and influence and stuff. You had the calling. Do you think it was influence? Because one of the things I'm trying to get citizens to understand is there's these generalized themes of call to service.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a trauma that caused it. It's influenced by family members, I think, and there are some other generalized things that people typically get drawn to this career field. So for you, it was.
I think if it was any of those, it was definitely family and watching uncles and other family members just do the job and having respect for them. Knowing who they were as people. Because I think I agree with you where exposing how the human side of who we are is key, because I think that's how you build bridges with community members is, we can talk a big game, but unless we're backing it up with action.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw with my family. I mean, I saw uncles that would literally pay for cars for folks that they knew were in need, or just did a lot of stuff without ever wanting recognition for it.
Yeah. The one of the things I noticed about myself was I was, we'd have family reunions and stuff like that. And I was always stepping back and noticing who everybody liked to swarm around. And it was always the military, first responders in our family. And I was like, maybe it was attention seeking? I don't know. As a kid, I don't know what the cause was, but I was just like, they're the most respected in the family. They're the ones everybody goes to when they're in trouble, when they want to have a laugh, when they want to do whatever it is. So I want that same family respect, I guess.
And saying that, there was an uncle that, at family functions was just kind of that guy where everybody gravitated to him. He'd sit at the table, and he loves hot sauce, so he'd always be he'd be eating and just pouring sweat out. But just who he was as a person, I mean, you're like, I want to be like that guy one day.
Yeah.
And he wasn't the one that rose to the top levels. I mean, although I've had a ton of respect for that person, I think it was the one that was more of the life of the party type that I was thinking.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my dad on his side of the family, he's the one. Everybody wants to hang out, talk to, and I'm just, my dad looks at me and he's like, what happened? Like, you didn't step up and follow my footsteps the same way. No, I'm just playing dad. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's definitely a reason why, a common theme, I think, for getting drawn to law enforcement, maybe fire, whatever first responder life is, you see that recognition that the family gives at a young age to those people. And that's the draw. That's the draw to it. So that's the calling part for me, because I knew as a kid, it's like, I'm gonna be a cop. It wasn't specifically because of my dad, and people automatically assume it was because my dad was a cop, and I'm like, no, it was a part. But was
there a moment for you? Was it like a time or an age even?
Yeah, because actually, yeah, there was. I thought for a long time I was going to be a firefighter. My grandpa was a firefighter and chief, all that good stuff. But before he had reached that level, I just remember he got to put lights on his truck, his personal truck. Always had a radio playing, like to hear the calls going out for service and stuff. And I remember, if I was with him, if I just happened to be with him in the truck and a fire went out, we were lights and sirens in his personal truck to the firehouse. And I was like, that is the coolest thing ever. Well, I got stuck with him on a call, and there was nobody at the firehouse to keep an eye on me. I was probably 6 or 7, maybe 8. And so I had to go to the call with him. Now, he didn't do the fire truck. He was the medical van. He would ride in the medical van. He'd done his time, and in the truck, he doesn't do that anymore. So I remember riding in the passenger seat, and we get to this big old fire. I could feel the heat from across the street still in the van. Like, it was intense. I remember how hot that felt. And then the back two, the double doors open in the back, and I hear my grandpa like, don't look back here. Of course I'm going to look back there, And before I looked back there, I was like, what made me look was the smell. It's like, oh, what is that? As a kid. And I look back there, and it's a girl like slightly older than me. Burned bad. And I was like, F this. I didn't say that as a kid. Actually, at that age, I probably did. But I was like, no, I can't do this. That's disgusting. And that's, it's horrifying, all that good stuff. So I didn't know how I wanted to serve, but I know at that moment, firefighting was out the door. And then I had a cousin who was a state trooper, a female state trooper. So there was that influence. My dad was a cop. And I think that was the moment. I just didn't realize it at the time. But that was the flip of, if it ain't firefighting, it's going to be police work. It was going to be one of the two. I just didn't know what capacity. Now, did you always know you wanted to be a city cop?
No. I mean, I think that definitely was a big family influence, was the city cop thing. Because I think even early in my career, I had aspirations to go like DEA or something like that.
3-letter agency, right?
Yeah.
I was the same way.
Yeah.
Like, I thought when I was getting out of the military, I was like, I got to go. I got to keep my federal time, was what I was thinking. And I had a very naive outlook or understanding of what they do. And most of those 3-letter agencies, no knock on them, but the things I picture I'd be doing is what city police do at a major department. They don't do that. These 3-letter agencies, they rarely get to do the stuff I had pictured in my head.
Yeah.
So I was going for the prestige versus the actual job. And then when I finally figured out who's doing what and got to see it firsthand, the city police life was definitely.
Yeah, I think it's the same for me. I went to narcotics fairly early in my career. I think it was less than 5 years on, and I went over there, started working with a lot of those guys, and saw that we had the freedom and the ability to do a whole lot more with a lot less paperwork.
Yeah.
And be a lot more effective. And unfortunately for them, that they get tied up in so much paperwork most of the time.
Yeah. So you grow up in Fort Worth, and you're getting to the age where you can start working and doing all that. Now, do you go after this right at 21 years old? How long did you wait?
So my dad, he's one of, there's 9 family members and there's 6 brothers. 3 of his brothers worked for our same department. 2 of which retired from our department. My dad is a mailman, or was a mailman. He retired a few years back. Okay. And when I was either 19 or 20, right in that age range, I got a job at the post office.
Federal job, baby.
Yeah. So those benefits that come along with that, the pay wasn't bad. Yeah. And so, I'm 21. I remember they put out, that they're going to start applying, and, that they need the need for officers or whatever, recruitment. And I remember talking to my dad, and I was like, Dad, I think I like what I'm doing. I can be a mailman. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So he's like, it was like a 5-minute conversation. And my dad, he's an action guy. He's not really a guy that's going to give you a whole lot in conversation, but he's a worker. I mean, my dad's a great example of just working hard, keeping your nose clean. That's something he often says. But with that said, he just looked at me and he said, Son, I'm going to, you've never wanted to be a mailman. He's like, just stop messing around and go apply. So
telling them they're being loud.
My wife tends to be that way.
It's okay. But so your dad, is that what he's always wanted?
He's just he's a man of few words, and he leads by example. So when he had that conversation, it wasn't anything deep that he said other than, this isn't what you wanted to do. You didn't sign, mailman's never been what you wanted for a career. He said, just go do what you want to do. So that little bit of a push was really all it took. I mean, I knew I wanted to do it. It's that fear of commitment that I think we all have as young men, especially.
Yeah. And at your age, you guys were delivering on horseback most of the time, right? Sorry. Yeah. Had to take a shot.
I did get bit by a dog when I did that, though.
Did you really?
Take a guess on what kind of dog.
Pit bull.
No, it wasn't that cool.
Oh, no, Chihuahua?
A little weenie dog.
Little weenie? Oh,
little
dachshund?
So I started delivering in the Como area. Okay. And I got like the big dogs that you just talked about. I remember one day we did have those, wasn't a horseback, but those little Jeeps. You remember those?
Yeah.
Like military they're
like
Jeeps
Willies.
or whatever.
Yeah,
it was a Willie.
Yeah.
You could start those things with anything, like a little master key lock or whatever.
For sure.
So we had a Willie and was in Como, and because there's a lot of vacant houses in that area, they call them swings. And so your normal swing in a neighborhood that's populated is about a block long. Well, in Como, they're like 3 blocks long. And so you're walking up that 3 blocks, walking back to your car. And I think I was about a block and a half from the Willie. And I saw these dogs looking at me, and they start like kind of bumping the fence.
Oh no.
And bam, man, it opened. And luckily I had about 100 yards. It felt like I had 10 feet.
Yeah.
But I was able to like make it to my Jeep, hop on top. I think it was in a Leap, which I don't have hops, but I was able to get on top of that thing.
With a big old bag.
Yeah, before those dogs got a piece of me.
Oh, shoot. Man, I've been stuck on top of my patrol car for 20 minutes because the pack-a-hood, when you're, for those that don't know, Como, the area he's talking about it's a low economic, it's a hood and high crime area. Well, oftentimes a lot of those dogs get abandoned and dropped off places, and because they can't take care of them anymore, and the dogs pack together. So you'll get like little chihuahuas running around with pit bulls and some weird golden retriever mix. And it just is, I call them the hood packs. And you'll see these hood packs running around.
Well, oftentimes it's a small one that's leading them. It's
oh yeah, for sure. And then I get done with a call, and it wasn't even. I was at the call maybe 5 minutes, and I was like, oh, it's easy. So I'm standing outside my car. I'm leaning against the trunk. I remember that I was in a Crown Vic and leaning against the truck, and I'm just writing out some notes. I see the dogs come from around the corner. I'm like, okay, let's see what they do. And I'm just waiting for them to keep passing. And it was like a movie. It's like they got past me, and then the one at the very back looked to the right and was like, hey. And all the dogs turn around, and there's 2 pit bulls just come running at me. And I'm like, oh, shit, and trying to figure out where to go. So I got the idea to jump on top of the car. And I get up on top, and I'm standing up, and I realize they can't jump up on the car. They would try to just like slide. They couldn't get up there.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm on top of the car. I'm like, I ain't calling this out on the radio. I'm like, I'm not being that guy that calls and says, I need somebody to come help me. There's dogs got me trapped in my car. I wasn't doing it. So I sat there. I was like, they'll get bored. So I'm sitting there. 20 minutes go by, and then they're pulling on the fender, like with the pit bull was pulling on the fender a little bit. And I was like, hey, don't mess with my car. So then I would get my pepper spray out and hit a little spray into the wind that was going at them, and they left finally. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, you get trapped by them dogs.
And the one time I got bit by the little weenie dog, it was, like I said, I really didn't even want to tell this story, but it was nothing. Nothing cool about it. I just had just dropped the mail in front of, it was a little screen door type setup at that house, and I didn't even hear it. Just was a little silent assassin and came up and got me on my calf. And I was probably about 30 minutes from being done that day. And like you said, out of pride, I did not want to call my boss and say, hey, I got bit, and they come out with the nurse or whoever they would have brought out to kind of heal my wound. Yeah. I finished the route. So I finished everything I had to do for the day. I go back to the office. Yeah. And I told them I got bit, and they're like, you got bit? Like what, coming in the door? I was like, no, about an hour ago. Yeah. Like, and you didn't call us? I was like, I didn't know what to do. I mean, it was a little weenie dog. I didn't.
What am I going to tell you?
Hurt my pride? It wasn't like I was going to bleed out or anything.
Yeah. Did it make you? Were you wearing pants?
No, I had shorts. It was hot, so I was wearing shorts, and it had to go. Yeah, get my get shots and all that type of stuff. I don't think it needed stitches. Yeah. But yeah.
Dang. Yeah, that sucks. It's funny because I grew up with a weenie dog, Gidget. What's her name? Yeah, those was our little weenie dog. But yeah, those dog bites are.
It can be gnarly.
Yeah. But I mean, I wouldn't have told a weenie dog if I got bit by a pit bull, but not the weenie dog. So you're out delivering. How many years did you do that?
So I did it. I think I started at 19. So it was probably just under 2 years.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Dang, that's. I mean,
because it took. I started in Como, and that my dad also worked out of the same station as I did. Yeah. And I think that was part of it. I liked working with Dad, and
Yeah. Do you think being a mailman helped your social skills with the community? Were you talking to people a lot?
Yeah, I never thought about it, but I was shy growing up. I did not. I was not a talker. I did.
No.
So I think it had to have, because that in combination with, I was still 21 when I started here, so if you can't talk on this job, you're not going to be very good at it. Yeah. And, I think the post office definitely did break, because you're running into people, talking to a lot of people, and that did kind of break that shell somewhat for me.
I think a lot of problems that we run into as cops is that first, everybody knows 0 to 5 years is the hardest time for a cop. That's when they're most likely to get themselves in trouble or just get into some shit, not necessarily get themselves in trouble, but because you're still trying to figure out, you could be the most personable person in the world before becoming a cop. You could be a social butterfly. I was, and I could talk to anybody. But then when you start bringing in that combo of, do I have a right to detain this person? What are the laws? What's being broken here? Do I have anything? Do I have the right to even stop and talk to this person? Like, you've got all that running through your head, and then you're like, oh, I got to watch his hands. I got to, where is he carrying weapons? This guy any history? all of these things are running through your head. And I don't care how good you are at multitasking, your people skills go out the window when you have to process all this new information that you never had to process before. And until you get comfortable doing that, which takes, it just depends on your exposure as a cop, but that 0 to 5 years is usually that window of getting comfortable enough to now, like you and I, we show up to a call. I ain't thinking about I'm like, where's his hands? That's it. Let me see I can't see his hands. He seems cool. Like I'm not thinking about any of that other stuff anymore because I just know it. So it's doing what you did as a mailman and then transitioning over. That's a good start to dealing with the public. But again, I try to tell people, don't get a false sense of security because you're good at talking to people now and you haven't done the job.
Yeah, I think I obviously know why our academy and most academies do what they do, and it's needed. But I think it takes a while, like you said, to form who you are as a person out there. And because the public, they only see what they see, and they see a lot of times what looks like a robot.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's exactly how even I came off that way, because I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, sir, name, date of birth, I knew that one. Okay, cool. All right, sir. So can you tell me, oh, wait, I need your address too. What's your address? All right, cool. All right, sir. Could you tell me the story? And then they get into this. They start getting, oh, I need your phone number too.
Yeah.
And they're like, come on, guy. Like, I'm trying to talk to you here. And like I said, it's just it's a skill. It's a skill set. And the quicker you can pick the talking part up, I think the better cop you become. The rest falls into place.
That's funny because, now I noticed that part of the mentoring side or being a supervisor now that is something that I pick up. I just, you saying that kind of sparked a thought when I compliment, and we have to do the weeklies on these new probationary officers going through training. Oftentimes that's what I'm looking for. If they're good communicators, I compliment them and I encourage them to stay that way.
Yeah.
Because they definitely, I would say, just out of every 10, probably less than 50% of them come out of there where they're not robotic. It's pretty rare. It's probably 2 or 3 out of 10 that have good communication skills.
Yeah.
That show early in training.
And it oftentimes, not every time, so don't get offended. Most of the time, they're a little older, more life experience. I like seeing new cops come in at like 28 or higher. Like those always, they're the easiest to work with.
I agree. I don't think I had any business starting at 21.
I said the same thing. I was like, if you would have asked 18-year-old me if I was ready to be a cop, then I would have told you, hell yeah. Not only am I ready, I'll kick ass at it. Like, and now, almost 40-year-old me, I look back and I'm like, you weren't ready at 25. Like, I was too immature. My priorities were way different. I wasn't ready. And then
I actually was on the bubble of not making the cut at that age because on my review board, one of
this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Impact Tactical. Impact is a tactical outfitter for the men and women of our military, police, fire departments, and other public safety around the country. Impact's core beliefs is that fearless men and women protect our freedom and safety should have access to the best tactical performance apparel, equipment, and tools on the market. And they shouldn't have to go broke to get it. I've used Impact for about 11 years, and I can attest that they do live up to their core values. So you get a personal recommendation from me. You can find them at impacttactical.com. That's MPAK tactical.com. And be sure to tell them that 2 Cops, 1 Donut sent you.
One of the main decision makers on the review board, I guess, wrote up saying that I was too immature at that time. And it actually kind of drove me really early in my career.
Yeah.
I'm going to show that person. But I'm a competitive guy, so I think that definitely helped. But I will say that person, looking back at it now as a mid-40s guy, I'm like that person was right. I was too young and dumb to have the authority that I had back then.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. All right. So you get into the police department, and what was your idea of what type of cop you wanted to be? Were you going to be a SWAT guy? Were you going to be what path did you have chosen when you first got in?
So I I had a older cousin that started a few years before I did, and as a kid, I loved hide and go seek. So I just loved that game of hide and go seek. Narcotics always intrigued me from that aspect. So being a narcotic officer is something that I strive to be. I wanted to go to a side of town that I knew had that issue, you know, that you were going to run into folks that you pulled over that were maybe leaving a dope house or something like that. So I did go over to a lower income side of town with the hopes of getting into narcotics. And,
Okay.
yeah.
So, all right, walk me us through your career. Because how long have you been a cop?
So now I've been a cop for a little over 23 years. I started at 21. I guess I'll date myself. In July of 99 is when we started the police academy, graduated. At that time, it was like a 6-month academy. So we graduated in December of 99. And the police department, the powers that be back then, and I don't blame them again, but they didn't have enough faith that on Y2K, which was only about a week removed. My first day on the streets was Christmas Day of 1999.
Okay.
Well, a handful of days into the job, they either assigned us to the jail. They didn't let us go with our field trainers that on New Year's Eve. Because they were the big fear of Y2K and everything shutting down and whatever. So they didn't want a bunch of rookies out there like messing things up. So we were either at the jail that night, or me and a buddy who's still around as well. Him and I had to guard the front door communications for a shift on the night of Y2K.
No shit. I remember Prince's performance that night. I don't know why. It was such a powerful performance. I think just because of.
Are you like in diapers still?
Shoot. You what? 5 years older than me?
You're the one I was talking about age.
So yeah, I remember Prince's performance that night. It was awesome. But rest in peace, Prince.
Yeah.
Formerly known as.
He was a great artist.
Yeah, he was a good dude. All right, so you get cut loose, Y2K.
Then I'm on the south side of Fort Worth, or I actually trained in the downtown area, which was back then Adam District.
Okay.
So I trained in Adam District, and then got cut loose. Now that seems like they try to keep them on the same side of town, but that was considered north side back then. We didn't have a middle or a central division.
Okay.
But from there, when I got cut loose, I went to south side.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
And how long did you do in patrol?
I was in patrol about 3.5 years.
All right.
But I stayed in patrol because funny story, but I was an NPO early on in my career, neighborhood officer, community officer, but I really didn't want to be. It was just that a certain sergeant who's now retired he knew I played baseball growing up, so he had a very competitive softball team.
And so he needed a ringer.
He recruited me and a couple other guys that we became NPOs to go play softball with him.
All right. Yeah. I mean, that's a community service as well. Yeah. You should. So you didn't do your time in patrol.
3.5 years, but now that's like a lot.
But
you know?
To be fair, back then the NPO's mission was still very much patrol oriented.
Well, that was the other major reason that I was like, cool, I'll do it, because there's benefits like a vehicle that you have that you don't have in patrol. So
yeah,
or at least in our department. So getting that vehicle, and that was on a side of town again. I don't know. I can say sides of town, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
It was on the east side of Fort Worth. So on the east side, I knew if I'm an MPO over there, my beat was an area that had a bad drug problem.
Yeah.
So again, my goal was to get to narcotics. So back then, I kind of I used that as I had more free time to be able to just set up on dope houses.
Yeah.
And
start learning your craft.
Start learning the craft.
Yeah. And for those listening, like there's a process that officers start to learn when it comes to finding narcotics and learning how the criminal enterprise works and how there's dope houses and trap houses, whatever you want to call them, and how they run the dope, how a dealer, a spotter, there's just all these. If you ever really want to learn, watch The Wire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's fairly true story. I don't want some of it's probably Hollywooded up a little bit, but to this day, it still applies.
No, and that's why I never finished on that hide and go seek thing.
Oh,
but
I'm sorry.
But no, we just got off into something else.
Sidetracked.
But
Yeah.
but that's what I would do. I mean, I'd get a pair of binoculars, or sometimes if I didn't have the binos, I just would get literally sometimes often in some bushes where you're just watching. I had a little convenience store that they loved a pocket deal in front of, hand-to-hand transactions. So if I saw that pocket deal go on, and then the big thing was I learned this early on. I always think of like that movie Colors, where Robert Duvall's talking to Sean Penn about how the bulls walk down.
Yeah.
So I had to learn it that way. I mean, you rush up and nobody has anything. You know, they don't have anything in their pockets. They've put it somewhere else. So I had to learn that over time. Like, okay, you saw that, but where is he going to? Where's he before and after?
Yes.
And that was always cool. Once I learned that, I was like, man, it was like Easter egg hunting at that point. It'd be off in trees. It'd be under some rocks, under a brick. And, you know, it was always that feeling like when you found it, it was just like that proud moment where you're like, gotcha.
So if you're not familiar with some of the tactics in dealing narcotics, one of the things they'll do is somebody will come up to the dealer or the runner, the guy that's just a money person, and they'll give him money for the dope. And that person will go over to the dealer and say like, yep, he's good. Well, the dealer has either already put it somewhere or goes and puts it somewhere. A lot of times I'll see him put it in a chip bag, like an empty Doritos bag. And they'll go put some dope in that bag, and they'll set that bag on the ground somewhere and then tell him like, your dope's over there. And he's got his money. You never see him with the drugs technically, you know, and then now that person goes over and picks a piece of trash up off the ground and they got their narcotics, and that's one of the tactics they use. So, and it's been effective since since the 70s, I'm sure. So, that's just one of the things you start to look for.
So really that's how I was able to get to narcotics, was a lot of as NPOs back then, which they don't really do anymore, but back then we would do what we call jump outs.
Yeah.
And
yeah, buddy.
We had like this little old like child molester style van. It just what it looked like. It was like
free puppies inside.
Yeah. It was just some raggedy van that we'd all ride around in. And you know, it definitely didn't look like anything the department owned. So we would do jump outs. I mean, we knew where our problem areas were, and most of the time when we just open those side doors, run, you're going to get a handful of folks run from you. So again, that doing stuff like that, we ran some warrants back then. I remember going through entry school, and definitely things did not go as planned on my first search warrant. You got a group of MPOs, half of us in like bike shorts and you know, and just
the
whatever.
Bad News Bears.
I mean, I think a few of us wore helmets similar to that. I mean, it wasn't top notch gear, but the first one we ran, an officer was actually, I think through marriage or something, where he was somehow related to the house we were actually running on.
Oh,
so it wasn't like a direct bloodline. It was like his wife's cousin or something like that. So he did not want to drop us off. He was the driver. He's like, I can't get near that house.
See me, yeah.
And he's like, I have to drop y'all here. He dropped us with, you know, you have all your entry gear, and we were probably the Ram and everything else about a half a block off at least.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah, by the time
pigeons are flying.
By the time we got to the door, we're so worn out. But before we even hit the door, but
that's funny.
Needless to say, it wasn't very successful. And I remember telling the guys I was like, "This ain't how it's supposed to go. I just got trained. We're not supposed to get dropped off 2 blocks from the spot." Yeah,
the young up and comers telling everybody how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, they just pretty much looked at me just like that.
Yeah.
It's like Duvall teaching Sean Penn, like, just shut your mouth.
Right. How long did you did you get into the official narcotics team?
Mm-hmm.
Now you got in through being an MPO.
Yeah, because I mean back then it was. I mean, I'm sure like now you had to be able to show through paperwork that you know you made those types of arrests, that you had the stats to back up why you wanted to go over there. So
Okay. About how long did you do in narcotics itself?
I was there 5 years. I was there until I promoted, because it was about almost 5 years into the job when I got over there. So I did it for about 5 years because I'd always told myself before I'd even want to take a test, I wanted 10 years on the job.
Yeah.
A promotional test.
Now, looking back, reflection-wise, on chasing dope and all that stuff, has your opinion of doing it changed?
So I do think that when it comes to the lower level style deals, there's a lot of risk in like your pocket level, your street dealer type transactions. So it's a risk reward thing. I think that back then I loved doing that style of work. Right. But look, hindsight, like as a supervisor now, I would try to tell guys that there's a different way of doing it. So I think there's too much risk involved for the reward or what you're going to see or how much that benefits even the community that the problem's in, if that makes sense. There's other ways to address it is what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah. I found a lot of people, they chase dope for as long as they do. And then later on in their careers, they're just like, you're stomping an ant, the anthill's still, just another ant's going to pop out and you're just sitting there trying to kill every single ant one by one.
Yeah. Cause your dad, I think your dad was over there as a supervisor, I think when I went over there, or he was there during the time frame that I was there.
Yeah.
Least. And I could see your dad saying that, what you just said.
Yeah. You take one dealer and other ones, you just cut the head off the snake is all it is. And I've seen many they flip their mindset when it comes to that. And then the question is like, all right, what do you do? What's the right move for the community?
I think when it comes to street level dealing, it's surveillance is probably more effective than running on
gathering intel and doing all that. I agree.
And then trying to work something a little bit bigger.
Yeah. That's where I get into the real time crime center stuff. That's where I really like that coming in because you can set up cameras in hot spots. That's community concerns. And you can say, hey, look, this is what we can provide. Assuming the community's behind that idea. You show them the fruit of that and gather all that intel, and then you let the specialized units come in. I don't even know what to call the specialized units anymore. They changed their name so much, but your zero tolerance teams, whatever you'd like to call them, they come in and you get all the warrant roundup going and pick them off and keep them off the streets.
I think using technology to our benefit is where you want to go with that moving forward. And I think that's where most, at least bigger city police departments are going towards.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's safer. It's more effective. It's more efficient. Rather than having, 3 UCs set up on a place for however long, you've got 3 cameras with one person monitoring. And that's a force multiplier that, that keeps everybody safe. Nobody's in the area. You wait for that person to leave. You knock them down well out of the area. And
for anyone that's going to be listening, Eric's really good at that. So,
yeah, I love that stuff, man. That's definitely where I'm guiding my career, but it's new. It was not a thing. It wasn't a thing when you were coming up. So, I've been in policing now going on 17 or 18 years. And
how long did you do it in Michigan?
So, yeah. And I've been here 12.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. Been doing it a while. It's fun. Still like it. Yeah. Not as long as you, but I didn't get in the game as early as you did. So, I waited a little bit
Let's
longer.
Clarify that. We're only like 3 years apart.
Why do I look so much younger than you?
Come on.
It is.
Let's ask our wives.
Yeah. I know. I look weathered. No, so all right. So you get into that. You do your narc thing. You promote. So you become a detective. Did you have any? Was it a stepping stone, or was it something you wanted to do?
Detective work for me was more of a stepping stone, especially once I got over there and saw. As far as the great thing about narcotics back then, and I'm assuming now, is that you got to do your mid-level style investigations where you were writing papers. You know, you were serving search warrants. I mean, back then, a lot of times we were serving the warrants we wrote, but I think I learned a lot while I was in there. So when I went to the detective office, it felt like I was just pushing paper.
Yeah, I see that. I got lucky. I got to be, I maybe did a full year in general assignment, and then I got to do the property crime stuff, and that was as close to old school police work as I can think of, because now I got a team. We're writing warrants. We're out in the field. We're getting intel. We're doing UC work. We got a couple marked units always with us. Just out, not getting burglars and thieves off the streets, and we were really good. And I say we still are. And it's fun. Like you stay getting in chases, but not many people get to experience that as a detective. It's just a different way to do things. But I don't think there's ever been a real standardization when it comes to being a detective. I don't know if you ran into that. I found it to be a problem. I got trained by a great detective. I got lucky. It was luck of the draw, because the other detectives that were around me, some of them got trained by lazy detectives that didn't want to do the job. And that's not their fault necessarily, because it was how they were trained. Like, you know how that perpetuates. There really isn't a standardization to train a detective.
No, and then, I guess that this may also be a big city police department issue, is that it's not only at that rank, it's at, I'm a sergeant now, and I see that at my level, and even those levels above me, where you're as good as the drive that you have. Yep. Also the training that you receive. But you got to want it. If you just want to go in the detective office and not do a whole lot.
Yeah. You can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was only there a year, because I was like, I can't do this. It was 3 years before you could promote again. So a ZT, a zero tolerance corporal position popped up.
Oh, okay.
And I went over there.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So I went to that for 2 years, and I enjoyed that. I really did.
Yeah. Oh, that was in the heyday of zero tolerance too, because that was, man, they were out. If you're not familiar with like a zero tolerance team, they would look at hot spots in the city and saturate, just pull cars over, go make stop, knock and talks, all the different things, just doing enforcement all night long, not subject to call. And then if anything big did pop off, they were the tactical team that would come out, and if they could handle it, they would do it. If SWAT needed to come out, then they would hold while SWAT comes out. But
yeah, we were running a lot of warrants back then.
Yeah.
A lot of warrants.
Yeah. God, man. I wanted to do that so bad when I was still in patrol, but then it changed. Like the whole mission changed for ZT. So,
and we had it was a great team. There's a lot of experience on those teams that I worked a part of. A lot of guys there's a few guys that left to the 3-digit, institutions or whatever. But just good investigative skills units like that, you're really able to hone your craft.
Oh, for sure.
And there were some guys in there that, if they continued on the TAC side, several of them wound up in ZT,
SWAT.
SWAT. And then others, we even had a couple of SWAT guys that had done so long in SWAT that they were trying to tone it down some. A SWAT guy toning it down by going to ZT, but so I was able to get the benefit of getting some of those guys that came to our team, and again, it was a great time. I learned a lot when I was in there from, the tactic side, but investigative side. I mean, it was. I guess I'm biased, but what I'm saying is I wish it would get back to that a little bit more of that.
I think it will. I think eventually it will have to, because we adjust and shift to what the public's pushing. And if they start pushing this kindler, gentler, we want to take this offhand approach. Let's see where that goes. And if it works, great. Well, then there isn't a reason to go back to having CT. But if it's not getting the results you want, you're going to have to go back to something you knew worked.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think when they were even as effective as we were, I think the most effective time for that unit was back when the old cops days, when they were they were wearing the same uniform that we all wear, and they were just out there getting it. I mean, they just had some young, but it was, I don't know. I've said this, and I'm kind of moving forward, but I worked with a lot of great police officers. That it's been very rare, if any, honestly, times that I ever ran across a cop that I thought was rogue or just doing things they shouldn't be doing. I mean, and I've had the privilege of being a part of a lot of great units, and I never saw it. I saw us do a good job of policing ourselves,
Right.
So so again, I know that takes trust, and we got to build that trust, and there's things we got to do to be better at what we do.
Yeah.
But moving forward, I think, like you said, everything seems to be secular, and I think it's already kind of trending that way.
Yeah, absolutely. We got the violent crime initiative and stuff like that. I mean, that's what I like that we're doing is we're taking the old school tactics and we're using that new school twist to it with the tech.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're allowing our saturation units to stay on the outskirts, let the tech guide them in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they don't have to put themselves in harm's way. And again, we can do things a little more efficiently, effectively, and safely. And that's where the tech comes in. And if we keep doing that, I think we will develop a new blueprint for policing that has never existed.
Yeah.
So that's my goal, where I hope things start going towards. You have to get the right leadership to see that same vision and help champion your cause. Because at my level, it doesn't swing quite as big as if somebody at your level goes, but it doesn't swing quite as big as if a captain, you know, or a commander gets behind you. You get a commander behind what you're doing, you're golden. So, just got to get the opportunity. So if anybody out there is listening, give me the opportunity. I can do it. I just want to catch bad guys and girls. I don't discriminate. Catch them all, like Pokemon. But okay, so you do your time as a corporal, and you decide to promote to sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did that path go for you?
So I promoted to sergeant in 2012.
The year I got to our department.
Mm-hmm. That's old school,
right?
But I think I remember as a young officer, we all have those guys or girls that we looked up to, supervisors that were like we'd go to war with, if you will. So I had those folks in my life, and I just kind of always aspired to be that rank, or the current rank that I am now, sergeant. I really enjoy it because, like you segued, mentoring is huge at that level. You're either going to accept it as a supervisor or you're not, and those that don't, in my opinion, just aren't very good at it. Because you have to want to help your fellow man or woman. You have to try to build up that next generation of officers, or we're going to continue to have issues. I mean, on the community side of things, they only know what they know, and I think that our job as a supervisor is to try to show that young generation this is how you do it. Slow it down a little bit, that Robert Duvall approach. But then just mentor and show them that you don't have to be this robot. The academy has to do what they do, and I think our academy does a great job of it. But once you get out here, you got create who you are, learn from other folks, take the good and the bad, and I think that's so. Our jobs as a first line supervisor is exactly that, and you have to pull those ones aside when the time comes that are maybe not going about it the right way. Because I spent 3 years in this 10-year time frame as a sergeant. 3 of it was in internal affairs, so it's weird. I don't even like saying that, but it's just it's a necessary job. But I learned a lot again in that role, and but what I saw in that position was that a lot of times issues officers had that led to investigations by internal affairs were things that could have and should have been addressed
by the supervisor
early on.
I find the sergeant position is the most important position in a police department, in my opinion. And I find it is the most underutilized position out there currently. Like, I think that's the trend. I think there's so many supervisors that just, they show up, they get their paycheck, you know, they get their punch in time, and they do what's the minimum requirements that they are supposed to do so they don't get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is such a waste. That is not doing the community any service, and it's not doing the officers any service, because that, like you said, that is the chance to. I never stop mentoring. I'm training. I'll tell sergeants things. I'm like, hey, do you ever consider that? Like, I'm always trying
training
to,
up's a big part of that.
Yeah, I'm always trying to improve myself and people around me. But when you get supervisors that, they don't do it, and you got to start asking the questions. Well, why?
Mm-hmm.
Where's that disconnect starting to happen? And is it because of the public pushback for less enforcement? I don't know. Is it people worried that what's happened to other cops in other states and other cities, they're worried that that's going to happen to them? So now you got supervisors that are like, I wouldn't do anything, you know?
I think the key to life, as far as just a simple, I'm a common sense guy. So a simple key to life is communication. So I think what happens when it comes to supervisors that haven't had the sergeant rank, that first line rank for very long, is that there's that fear that sets in, or they hear of some story that maybe occurred or did not occur or was exaggerated in what actually occurred. The one thing I try to bring is that time and tenure now and that time in IA, just to tell those younger supervisors that it's not like that. Just go out there and do your job, be basically encourage. I think I encourage fellow supervisors more than I probably do officers, because officers, they got other officers to kind of, or corporals to kind of lean on.
Yeah.
I try to stay out of their hair for the most part, but with supervisors, I probably enjoy that the most, is just showing a young supervisor that, yeah, it may say this in black and white, these are the reasons why that is there, and it needs to be there. But with that said, if you're going about it, and it's real simple, doing the right things for the right reasons, and you can back it up with justification as to why you let a pursuit continue or whatever. I when I went back to patrol recently, I was asked that in a roll call by young officers. They'll put you on the spot nowadays.
Yeah.
And they were like, what do you think about pursuits? It's like, I love them.
Yeah.
They're like,
they're fun.
Yeah. They're like,
who doesn't?
So you're not going to turn it off? I was like, you're not going to, call them off or whatever. I was like, look, y'all know what the GOs say. I know what the GOs say. What I will tell you is that if you're on a busy freeway at a busy time of day, then you're your best judge. I'm going to hear it over the air, and I'm going to have the basic questions that I'll have for you. But until you articulate more over the radio, I'm going to let it roll to see what's going on. Yeah. But behind the wheel, the fear, not the fear, but the risk factor involved with it. It's a risk reward thing. And in today's world, especially, there's cameras everywhere. So if it's too great of a risk, with the technology we have with cameras everywhere, with ways that we have of identifying people and vehicles and everything else, then if it's too big of a risk, then it's incumbent upon you as a police officer, before it even takes me as your sergeant to call something off, to call it off.
Yeah.
Swallow some pride and call it off, because at the end of the day, it's a safety thing. If it's going to keep you safe and the public safe, you gotta look again at the public's expectation for us, and and then also think, that if it were to result in something tragic like a car accident that injured multiple people or even caused death, it's a reasonable thing, and it's not very reasonable to be going down the freeway at rush hour, 90 to 100,
right,
on a traffic violation or something.
Yeah, something that's you. I'm sure there's more to it, but you don't have it yet. Yeah. I've learned a lot through my years, and I'm just like, when you're talking to the sergeants, like, one, you need to know your GOs on that stuff. If it's something you're interested in, know the GOs.
Yeah.
So if you like doing pursuits and you want to go catch guys, then you need to know those GOs inside and out and know what ammo you need to give to your sergeant so he can approve it. Yeah. Because as soon as you start saying stuff, I've done it on accident. Like, what can you see in the car? My sergeant's trying to guide me. Like, what do you see in the car? I was like, I just see him. Like, turns out that later on I find out that there was a kid in the car or whatever. And so I see what he was trying to do. But that's one of the things the officers, they don't hold themselves accountable enough. They want to put it all on the sergeant. And I don't think that's fair.
But I think that's a key for a young supervisor is to put it right back on them.
Yes.
And that's what I often do with officers. I give them the freedom. We're all adults. And, at the end of the day, we all want to be treated as such. So if you start to micromanage and do all these extra things that aren't necessary, I mean, maybe those are the types of supervisors that I like to ask the question, why? Like, why do you think you need to do X, Y, and Z? And when we talk it out, a lot of times they're like, I never thought about it from that side. Or maybe, there's a lot of times where I learned something from what they're telling me. But with all of that said, I think that you got to do that with your officers as well. You have to kind of lay it out there with them. And, I think even your young and most aggressive crime fighting officers that are out there, when you phrase it in a way where you're coming with respect towards them, and asking them, cause out of genuine concern why certain things are happening, you'll see that light bulb a lot of times, just kind of come on. And so,
supervisors I think the best supervisors, they make their expectations clear and up front. Like if I get a new sergeant, like the first thing I want them to do is like, here's what I'm expecting. All right, cool. And then the next thing they need to do is they need to be able to provide the tools needed to accomplish the things that they want. So if you want me out there writing 2 tickets a day, whatever it is, provide them the tools to do that. If they're going call to call, understand, like, I need to give those officers some time to go be free and handle up whatever it is. If it's patrol, if it's being an academy instructor or wherever they're at, you need to be able to, as a supervisor, basically provide the tools they need to accomplish the expectations that you have. And as long as they're clearly listed, man, there is no micromanaging.
Yeah.
You don't need to. You've already made it very clear. This is what I expect.
Yeah.
And you can't get mad at that. One of my favorite ball busting supervisors I had was Raul. And a lot of people were like, oh, I can't stand her. And I'm like, why? She's very easy to work for. She tells you day one, hey, new guys, this is what I expect. Boom. Cool. All right. I remember asking, I don't know how to do this. She's like, all right, come here. Let me tell you. This is how you do it.
I loved her too. I had her I was a new sergeant at the time when I had her. She was a lieutenant, and like I said, I give it to me like she did, like she delivered straightforward and let me know how you want me to operate. And most of the time, if you had valid reason or, hey, this is, are you okay with this and that and the other? I never had an issue with her. I think she just, I think folks looked at that like that she was micromanaging. I never saw it that way.
No, I didn't either. And a lot of times it just goes with clashing personality types of people that cops are alphas for the most part. And they don't want to be told how to cop sometimes. I don't necessarily think she was telling people how to cop. She's just telling you what she needed. And you didn't want to do those things. And it was too hard for you just to step up and say, well, it's me. It's not her.
We could talk for an hour on what you just said, right?
Yeah,
there.
I know. Yeah. All right.
Maybe too. Yeah.
All right. Well, you've been a sergeant since 2012. Now,
when you started.
Right. Well, when I started at our department. In that, there comes the reflection of your career. All right. You got 23 years under your belt. The drop starts in 2 years for you?
Yeah, July, middle of 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, you noticed you had this great career, had fun, you learned a lot, did the narc side, tax side, even IA, which is rare for a lot of people to touch. but you got a wealth of experience, and I would consider that well-rounded.
Mm-hmm.
So you can start to notice gaps in policing and what's lacking, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, all that stuff. So you do that, and you come up with this mentoring idea.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd actually kind of hit me up on it, I think, maybe a year before you'd even done it.
You were one of the original guys on my little list, my little notepad of guys that I wanted to bring in. That again, it's definitely, I would say, where do I see myself going from now until the end of my career? That's my number one focus right now, and probably will be maybe even after I retire.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the epiphany?
So you talked about the spiritual side. I grew up a little Catholic boy on the north side, and
with as many uncles and stuff that you said you had, that makes sense. I grew up Catholic too, so.
But church was, I've used this joke over and over. I'll use it again. But Pops was, he's a Cowboy fan, so if the Cowboys were playing at noon like they did today, and they beat your Lions, by the way,
I don't really expect anything different. It's the Lions.
Yeah, but Dad knew where we could go and be out by 11:30 to be home watching the game by the noon kickoff. So he was good about, we got there every week. But I guess as I've grown older, I was just searching for a bit more, and it was getting into the mentoring side of things. It's something that I saw. I was in the bike unit during the George Floyd events that touched our city pretty dramatically as well, with the things we saw in our downtown area, the 60 to 70 days or however long it was of protests that we had downtown. During Floyd and after the Floyd stuff, I saw that there was a need for, building bonds with the community, but I also saw a bigger need internally where, like you talked about earlier, we don't do a great job of training up the next guy up. It most of the time it falls solely on, like in your case, if you're a passionate guy, you go after things, but you and I can agree that that's not always the case with guys and girls that we work with, Yeah. So if they don't have that internal drive, or maybe they do, but they just don't vocalize it as much as you or I do. I mean, nobody's going to ever accuse me of not saying what I feel I need to say, type of thing. You know? But I just saw that. I saw how it affected officers, when it came to talking about the Floyd stuff again. And I saw that we talk about this brotherhood, but what are we really doing about it? I saw that as a weakness even in my internal affairs days, where, the worst days of my career, and there's a lot of bad days. There's also been a lot of great days, but some of the bad days were when you knew that somebody was coming in to lose their job. Somebody was coming in to turn in their gear, and they're something that they dedicated, and a lot of times 15, 20 years of their lives to. That's how they identify. They're a police officer, first and foremost, most of the time. What did we do after that? I mean, we just took their stuff from them, and unfortunately, we've seen it. We've seen the effects of PTSD, the effects of what a traumatic event like losing your, divorce, or in this case, losing your job or whatever can do to a person. Yeah. I just don't think. I don't know if. I guess smaller departments, that's where it's good to work for a smaller department. They probably do a better job of it because they know each other that much better than probably what we do. Right. You don't get quite as lost in the crowd. Just not a 4-digit ID. Yeah. Yeah. Or 3 in your case. Yeah. So I just saw, like, I worked for a chief as an administrative sergeant after I left internal affairs. And when I was working for him, he was great, did a lot of stuff with our community, and really did build some ties with some of the programs he started, or just the friendships that he built. But I remember having those conversations with him. I was like, Chief, you're doing, there's no doubt, a great job with all of that, but what are we doing internally about our guys? I mean, I'm just another sergeant of whatever, 200 and whatever, however many we have here, but I would throw those little nuggets his way, and it's not just on, obviously not just on his shoulders to do stuff like that. It's not on
Yeah.
any, I guess what really why did it occur? It's just, the Lord told me, he was like, if you want it done, then get it done. So he just put that challenge in front of me. And, that's why the Catholic thing, what I was talking about is for me, and I think when it comes to religion, it's to each their own, and different religions are going to reach people as long as you have that relationship with him. I think that was the biggest key for me, that my wife has always grown, in our marriage now, we've been married since 2004. So you're talking about almost coming up on close to 20 years of marriage, she would always tell me, cause our wives know us best. And she'd say, you just got to talk to him, and I never knew what that meant. I was like, that sounds crazy. That sounds crazy.
Yeah. When I pray, it's in my head. I'm not talking to anybody.
I got like these set prayers that I got to say.
Yeah. 12 times and then I'm forgiven. So, Catholicism is a beautiful religion. I always say that, but man, is it mind numbing.
Yeah. So, but that's what I knew. That's exactly what I knew. So when she said things like that, I was like, again, it didn't make sense initially to me.
Yeah.
It really just didn't. And, life is funny how the trials, the tribulations, the valleys and the peaks that you reach. And, so last year I lost definitely my spiritual mentor, my grandfather. He just, died. I'd say the effects of COVID is probably what it was. That, he passed, was always in great shape. I mean, go to Grandpa's house on the north side, and he a lot of times he'd be doing pull-ups in like his mid 80s. I'm like, that's impressive, Gramps.
Holy cow! Yeah.
So
dang,
he passed at 88, but he was still up until that point in good shape. And he won't get into all of that, but it was a big blow to me, obviously, and I just was like, man, what am I going to do now? It's kind of what I started thinking, and then I really started thinking about my own journey as spiritually. And I was like, in the Christian world, they use the term often, and I do, being fed, and I just didn't feel like I was being fed with that particular religion. Believe me, I've got a lot of spiritual mentors that's again, I think it's a beautiful thing and can be. It's very the traditions of it all. So it's, again, I want to preface by saying this is no bash on any one religion. I just felt like for me, it wasn't reaching me. And if it wasn't reaching me, what was it doing for my own spouse and my children? And so I just made the decision. And I had some mentors in that realm that kind of just showed me, here's where I go. This is what we do, that type of thing. And so I reached out, started going to a church that was recommended to me, and loved it right off the bat. You hear stories of guys saying, man, it felt like the pastor was just talking immediately to me. Yeah. And that's what it felt like just arrows just getting shot into me, man. Like, boom, that one hit. And that's where, through some obedience and learning what it is to have a relationship with Christ was, that's where this men's fellowship thing popped up. And like you said, it's been a little over a year ago now, I think. I want to say the first meeting we had was, and I had no clue. I mean, I really didn't, like, what's this going to be? I just was knowing that there was, number one, a need in our police department for it. And I'd say for every police department, I think, how do you, again, it gets back to communication. How do you expect somebody to know you and you to know them unless you're talking, you're getting to know them? Genuineness. I think too, though, a big thing is what I've learned in my own journey is humility, swallowing pride. We as alpha cops, we don't want to admit to anybody when we have a problem. Yeah. But I've learned that if you got the right group of men or women around you, in this case, I kind of was, I just thought it'd be best to start it as a men's fellowship. But I do agree, and I would be more than willing to help any female on our police department to kind of show them, look, I don't have any great how-to or some great blueprint on how to do this. I can just tell you how through my relationship with him, I was prompted to start this. And now that I've started it, I know it's helped me a ton. And I think if you polled the audience, if you asked, I think we're up to almost 40 guys that attend, and we're all, and I do it at a time that's not always most convenient for our jobs.
Shoot, I miss most of the meetings. I'm working. It's hard, but
I'm trying to do it at a time. Get come during your lunch hour.
Yeah.
And just sit. And I think that each and every time, and I'm there for almost every one. I think I've only missed one or two because of vacation or something like that. But I can say I always get something from it, and the feedback that I have received has been awesome.
Yeah.
And I think I can learn a lot from what you've done with your podcast on how to help grow it. And you've already gave me some ideas out of the room on what could be done to kind of expand on it. But what's the goal for it is to set those roots deep enough to where if I do leave in 2024, that the next man up can guide it. And it's really just teaching guys, like my wife kind of taught me what it was to have that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong. 10 weeks ago I decided to stop drinking, but that was from I was getting up and going to work every day at 4 a.m. to be there for a 5:30 roll call.
Yeah.
And it was just, you can gain a lot. You can get a lot of clarity when it's just you and the road, you and him. And I oftentimes rarely had my radio on. And he just told me in a conversation, that he said, if you want a commitment from me, Rick, I need to see that you're committed. So for me, what that meant was, I get it. 'Cause I can't guide men, mentor men if they see me Frank the Tank in it on, through Facebook or even in person or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, and then trying to help them with their own issues. Yeah. So I think during the time frame that, and however long I mean, in a perfect world, it might be something. It could be while I'm still here too. Some guy could come along and like, man, I'm feeling something. Do you want to take this? Here's the baton, run with it. And I think that's what it is in this Christian walk that I'm now taking. But I want people to know, I want officers to know, look, you don't have to have the same belief system as me. I know what it's done, and I can kind of, if you care to listen or learn, I can just tell you my own story and how being humble and submitted and obedient to Christ has changed my life. I mean, I guess a lot of people would have looked at me through my career and said, like you said earlier, like, oh, he's, had a good career or whatever. And I have, but I guess I started to question, who is Rick Mendoza? What am I going to be when I leave this place? What are my kids? What does my wife think about me?
Yeah. Because the job's going to keep going.
Yeah. The job will keep going. Yeah. I mean, they'll soon be 5-digit guys,
Yeah. Yeah. But in that, you get this mentorship idea. What are you hoping to mentor? Like, what are the specific things that you had in your mind? I get the spiritual side of it, but we're also talking, it is still career oriented.
Yeah.
Like, we're trying to guide our guys internally. So what was the goal there?
I think internally what I'm trying to do is teach guys that healthy habits, healthy life habits. 'Cause
not working bars and
I mean, I mean, not that, I mean,
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, if you have to establish and root yourself and have healthy habits. 'Cause if it's a popular thing, and our guys we've all heard it before. Well, they'll talk smack about their significant others and the old ball and chain. And that's putting it kindly on what you hear a lot of times. I think for me, it was just, I want to try to show guys healthy habits. So, I mean, I had a good buddy that is still in the penitentiary over a traffic accident that occurred while he was off duty. But, he spent most of his adult life now behind bars over the decision to get drunk where he shouldn't have been behind the wheel, and an accident occurred. Yeah. So it's just trying to show, guys, that there's other ways of doing it. Can you be at your own house and have a cold one, or have more than one cold one? Of course you can.
Obviously.
Yeah, of course you can. But it's just
being responsible.
Yeah, being responsible and having healthy habits when it comes to all that. So
yeah, well, in the culture of policing, it's been, I mean, it's huge. Drinking's huge. Swearing, partying, unfaithfulness, all sorts of bad cultural habits in the police world. And now what do we got? We got one of the highest suicide rates we've ever seen in policing. You got officers constantly getting tied up for dumb stuff, whether it's lying or whatever it is, because that maybe it is they don't have the guidance. Maybe they just need somebody that they look at that career and they're like, he's made it this far. He seemed, it's like talking to the old Viking. It's nothing scarier than an old man in a dangerous career field type thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like you pointed out, there's nothing guiding. There's nothing. There's zero. You've got people are like, oh, what about the what do they call them? Crisis counselors and stuff like that. That's very detached, and it's very you have to build a trust.
Yeah, you're not going to call somebody up and spill your guts to them that you don't even know. It's a name on a page type of thing.
So the thing I like about the idea for this mentoring thing, the spiritual thing is awesome, and there's some people that. We discussed this when we were actually developing the thing. I was like, that's going to turn some people off. But I think if you're able to phrase it in a way like, if that's not, we don't have to get into the spiritual side, but you can come in and you can talk and just, I trust Rick. So I know, like, if I had something, I'm going to go to Rick anyway. But knowing that there's a group of 40 plus people and you're not stuck with, you don't have to be in front of the whole group. You can say, hey, afterwards, like, you find somebody you trust, and the bigger the group gets, the more likely you're going to have somebody you've already got a rapport with inside that group.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this, we're not going to steer away from, you're going to, the Bible will be opened and verses will be talked about. And that is definitely what we're rooted in, but it doesn't mean, do I want somebody who's searching or even if they're strongly have other beliefs, I'd rather them there and need us and be there than not to be there. Yeah. So I don't want somebody's, belief system or lack thereof or whatever to keep them from coming. If they need help, that's what this is about. It is about,
Yeah. That's the part I was trying to get people, like, I don't want that to make you think like, oh my God, it's just going to be, no, like we're here for anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
Because most of the time what it does is, like you said, it breaks down that wall, that uncomfortableness, and they're going to see somebody in that room that they connect with, that maybe that person shares a story, and like, man, my story is real similar to that, or I'm going through that and I didn't know how to deal with it. So they reach out offline and talk to that guy. Yeah. And so that's why I think, I'm biased, but that's why I believe it is better than, just a list of names, like, call this person if you have trouble.
Yes, I agree. And you got that whole fellowship going on, and I like when the group shows up and we're cutting it up. Yeah. Just before, and then, afterwards, everybody's got like this refreshness to them. That's the only way I can describe it. Most have a refreshness to them. Some still haven't worked it all out while they're there, but that's okay. That's part of the process.
One of the big things too that I have been saying lately at the meetings is it's like Vegas, but in a good way. Like, whatever is said in there stays in there. Yeah. Because it's got to be built on trust. Yep. And that's the main thing, is that guys got to know that they have the freedom to talk about it, that also they can look at me and my story or some other guy. I mean, there's lieutenants in there. There's some fairly high-ranking guys that have attended. And with that, I think it's refreshing for them to see that, wow, I always thought that guy had it all together. And, he just shared this story.
He's having a rough go right now.
Yeah, and it's good that, it could be a 1 or 2 year officer that's picking up a guy who's been here for 25, 30 years. Yeah.
It's a different way of therapy. And you know what I mean? Like, for a place that we don't have a lot of options that we are interested in. I think that's another thing. Cops, they see all these options. I do think that people are really trying to give cops a bunch of ways to get help these days, but they're just not hitting it yet. And this group is a way of, like, I think it's a way to bridge that gap with other officers. Now, you chose to do a men's only thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get into what your thought process was for that?
Thought process with that is, like you said, what do a lot of male officers struggle with? And, of course, infidelity is one of those things. And so if a guy's going to come in there and share a story, I want that guy to be able to feel at ease with saying whatever he wants to say, whatever he's trying to get off of his chest, and have other men to build him up, and other men to talk about. Just as I did have a female officer that I talked to recently that she kind of did come at me about that. Like, why don't you have females there? I was like, look, in a perfect world, we could all get together. I said, but I think that's something in time that can occur. But I think that I would rather right now, if it's something that there's a need there, obviously too. I would love to help mentor and help you with how to get it off the ground,
Yeah.
But
especially when we haven't even fully established.
No,
I mean, we're still creating it in a way. So
yeah. So it was just that. It was definitely not trying to keep my sisters out of it at all. It's just I thought initially starting it was best to keep it like that.
Yeah. One less complication on an already very complicated process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, because most of us, especially in our profession and men in general, we're prideful, you know, so I think learning how to swallow that pride and be more humble and being more open, it's a lot easier for a man probably initially to start to learn how to do those sorts of things if they're not showing a weakness and whatever.
Now, since you've been doing this, what are the good things you're seeing? What are the negative things, if there's any?
Personally, I mean, and I constantly ask for feedback. I think I don't want to say it's all positive, but I think it is. I mean, I haven't got really any negative feedback other than, I think recently I had a guy come and say that he had heard some things. So, but I haven't talked to him offline. I think what it was that, I don't think it was like somebody going and sharing a story about what was said in a meeting.
Yeah.
It was more of, I really don't know what it was, but I know he said it wasn't keeping him from coming to a meeting. My main thing and what I told him, I was like, look, everything that we talk about is confidential. It's one-on-one. And, my plan is to meet up with him in the recent, that's the only, I mean, I'm talking in circles about it a little bit, but it's been all positive. I've gotten guys that have came to me thanking me recently at a meeting when there were several guys that spoke. It was all genuine and heartfelt, but I think there was about 8 guys that spoke that meeting, and they each said, they're like, man, I just love what this group has done for me. I love what it's helping me do in my own house, because that's kind of that's one of the big things that I try to tell guys is like your spouses, your children, they're going to be your best barometer for who you are as a man.
Yeah.
If you're walking into the house and your spouse or your kids are running to go get ice cream or they're going to the back movie room to avoid you or whatever else is going on, then it's time to start kind of reflecting on why is it like this? And, so I think it's teaching guys how to more effectively communicate at home.
Yeah.
And how to be more of a spiritual leader at home.
Yeah. And the byproducts of it is what I really love is if I'm taking care of my roots, which is me and my family, that's going to reflect in my job. Now I'm going to perform better for the community. I'm going to have a better vision. I'm going to see clearer versus being stressed out and narrow-minded and not being as effective as a communicator as I can be when I get out and do my police job. So we start focusing internally first, and then we can better effectively serve the community. So it's an awesome byproduct of it's something that maybe not even was the initial intention. But
well, I think speaking personally on what it's helped me do, it's what you're just saying. Like we joked about what we were going to talk about because I'm a part-time guy. So talk about scheduling part-times, Rick. What are we going to talk about for 2 hours? I'll say like when I'm busy, when I'm in the middle of something like that, I have learned how to pause, if a guy's coming into my office, it's worthy enough for me to set down whatever I'm doing and see what's going on. Like don't shoo him away and say, Give me like 20 minutes and yeah. So it's learning like the value and stuff like that. So not only the value there at work, but obviously the value at home too. I mean, there's days that we all have as cops where the last thing we want to do is come home and communicate with our significant other or even our children.
Yeah.
But when we learn how to do that and how to like put ourselves aside and be selfless, that is truly the key. I mean, that is the key to life. I mean, showing love to others. I mean, that's it's imperative. You know, if you want to be known as a good person, which I think even probably your worst criminals for the most part all want to think that, you know, they're deep down a good person. Most of them are. They just have habits that cause them to commit crimes or whatever it is. I mean, I think there's very few people in this world that are just evil, you know?
Right.
So I think with that said, I think it's just teaching guys how to be selfless, you know, how to practice with humility, how to live life with humility. And again, it's been great. I mean, like you said, I'm still feel like a lot of times I'm flying at the seat of my pants, but it's growing. And
yeah,
I think the biggest thing right now is hopefully with the podcast, it'll get out to more and more of the department. I've kind of been somewhat hands off with advertising it because I don't.
Yeah, it's like Fight Club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me though, it's more of it. I think when like there's flyers for it and it just says Bible study. So I think there's probably a certain section of officers like they just for whatever reason they just like, I don't need that, you know.
Right.
I think that it's a lot deeper than that, and I think once they start to attend, they'll definitely see that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's no, I guess that wouldn't be a good idea. I was thinking of an idea. I won't even say that out loud. But
I'm sorry, I'm already getting convicted internally about what, like when I say deeper, there's no book that's better or that you'll learn more from than the Bible. But what I mean, I say deeper, I think there's people that have had bad experiences when it comes to religion or church or whatever. Yeah. And I also want to show that, that, you know, Jesus, his mission was to show love, you know, love for our Creator and love for your neighbor. Yeah. So if you know that, and that's the root of it, then hopefully in time, whatever religious or whatever has swayed people away from religion, this can just show them that that's really not what's in that book. I mean, that book is based on love. You know, there's some tough stories in that, you know, but with that said, it's going to be rooted from that. Cause Rick isn't like, I'll say this, if it was up to Rick and Rick starting this thing, I wouldn't have never done it. Cause there's a lot of, you know, I've got 3 kids, I've got a wife, I've got, you know, a lot of different things that I'm responsible for. I didn't necessarily have the time to do it, but it's the best decision, you know, despite marrying my beautiful wife. It's the best. It's one of the better, I'd say, if not the best, at the top of the list life decisions I've made.
Really?
Is to start it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Right now, the way that the group's going, it's getting bigger. I think it's spreading. Hopefully, like you said, people will watch this and decide to give it a try. Worst that happens is it's not for you.
Yeah.
That's the worst that happens. But I think once you start getting into the brotherhood part of it, that is where the thin blue line comes in for me. That's the way I look at the thin blue line. I don't think of it as where that, you know, that whole, I don't know how to put it, that aggressive military mindset of where that wall between the bad that's out there. Like I don't look at it like that. I look at the thin blue line as taking care of each other, like the way that we do. Because if you fall in the line of duty, your family's not going to want for anything other than you. But because us, your brothers and sisters, we're going to make sure that, you know, that kid goes to prom. Your kid has a car, or whatever it is, for driver's license. Your wife's taken care of on your anniversary and stuff. Somebody's going to be there if she chooses to have somebody there with her, you know, just make sure that they're okay. Like that will carry on for the rest of their life after you fall in the line of duty. But it continues, the thin blue line continues when I say we also do what you got started here. We're taking care of each other. Like that. That's the way.
So where I think it picks up that, you know, our brotherhood, they've done an excellent job. I mean, the fundraisers, the money raised, the partnerships they've made with, you know, 22 Kill, other organizations like that, phenomenal in the work that they do. You talked about having Jimmy on here, and, you know, Jimmy's awesome at what he does. I think what this does that's different is that it's on a more personal level, you know? I mean, we're not going to be able to raise the amounts of money that the brotherhood can or other organizations can, but I think where it's definitely, I'd say, more valuable. It's what it's going to do for that person in their daily walk. You know? Because it doesn't always, in theory, I mean, what I'd hope to avoid, and, you know, is that it doesn't lead to, guys don't lose their careers because they're leaning on something too heavy, or, you know, they don't get divorced because of the issues that, you know, we all struggle with. And that's a big thing. I mean, I think men in there admitting to their own weaknesses, there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
I think that's where other guys can see, like, I don't have this persona that I think I have to have while on the job. I don't have to be that same guy when I get home. You know, I don't, you know, you can share things with your spouse and be considerate of how you do it, you know, and still not want to give all the details, all the ugly details of some of these things that we deal with. Yeah. But you can still do it where that other person knows that you care enough about them to share some stuff with them. Yeah. But you're also protecting them with what you're not sharing with them.
Yeah. Because we cops do that all the time. We'll talk shop talk all the time with another cop, but we don't tell our spouses any of that stuff. And then if they happen to catch, you and I are sitting here BSing, and she happens over here like, what? Like, you never told me any of that. And then that causes rifts, that causes problems, that cascades down. And I've shared with our group and on the podcast many times, I've always taken the opposite approach. I tell her everything. And if she wants the details, I give her the details. If she doesn't, you know, she'll tell me, you know. And
I'd say you're probably a rarity, though.
It is. But I had the benefit of seeing my dad's career. Not that he was one of the problem people, but all his friends and stuff. Like, God, they're all in like their third marriages or constantly in the doghouse and doing. I was just like, I don't want that. I don't want that to be my life and a career that I like, you know? And so I just kind of figured out what I seen people doing different or all doing the same. And I was like, is there a different way to do it? So sharing was obviously one of the things that I decided to do, and I continue to share through our group. So I like talking about what's on my heart, what's on my mind. And it makes me, it's a refresher. That's the way I look at it. When we get done with our group, shoot, that carries me for the rest of the week.
Yeah, and I would just hope that what it's also teaching guys is that beyond this job, you know, we want to be identified by a lot more than, you know, on our gravestones. They don't just want to be, that was a great cop, you know.
Yeah,
you know, like that's where it ends. You know, you want to be able to, you know, have built like friendships. Like, you know, that guy, he was what he was as a cop, but more than that, he was a good person. He cared about other people, and especially when I keep pointing that way, but that's where our spouses are, you know, like you also want them to, it's good to know that, hey, I was a good dad. I was a good husband. And there's always things we can do to be better. And so that's the thing. Like, I want guys to know that maybe if you're not there, it doesn't mean that, again, you're not going to be judged in that group, in that fellowship group. No, because it ain't like any of us are going to have trophies for being, you know, dad of a lifetime, you know what I mean? Husband of a lifetime. We all have our weaknesses and our flaws. And so I believe, again, that's where the power is to know that, yeah, this guy's, you know, messed up like a soup sandwich and gone through all kinds of stuff. And, you know, but again, he's able to admit it. He's humble enough to admit it. And we all, I think, learn from it. And so I if anything, guys, and girls, because again, I do want to help, you know, female officers, whoever that person is, if you're out there and you watch this, that reach out to us, because I think between me and the guys that are already part of this, we can tell you how we started it. You know, the learning. I mean, there was a period of time where pretty early on in it, I almost wanted to shut it down because you know, you start getting into your own feelings like, man, nobody's showing up. There's this
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But again, it was good that I had guys around me that's like, man, this is helping me. This is, you know, so again, it's sometimes you just
helps, man.
You just need that one guy. I mean, you really do. If it's just me and you talking, I mean, it's good to talk to. I feel great talking about it right now with you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I find a lot of correlations in just doing the podcast because, you know, cops are our biggest, critics. That's what I meant to say. And I was so nervous about what peers were going to say. I was so nervous about, people not watching or listening. I was like, you know, a part of me kept telling myself, you're doing this because you want to do it. And I did want to do it. And I thought it was a good idea. But then, like you said, I started getting in my own head. I'm like, I wasn't much of a numbers guy, but somebody asked me, like, how many listeners do you have? And I was like, well, maybe I should look. And then I look and I'm like, well, like, that's not very good. And I'm comparing myself to the worst person possible, Joe Rogan, who's the #1 dude. And I'm like, he's got like 4 million and I got 20. Yeah. You know, and 15 of those are my mom. So, yeah, you do. I was the same way. I got to a point and I started putting money into it. And I was like, she gave me like a little bit of leeway, like $2,000. And I was already going crazy. But I believed in the reason. I knew there was a good cause behind it. And same with the group. Like I totally understand that feeling of like, man, this isn't going how I was hoping it would go.
Well, I think we have these visions of grandeur, you know, like, and I right away I was thinking, oh, we're gonna have like kind of what the Brotherhood does, like these big events, these big camp outs, and you know all this type of stuff. And I think that going back to why it was males and females, because originally I was thinking, oh, when we do these camping things,
like do outings,
we don't need the distraction of you know of all that. So so that was another factor early on. But when I realized it's really not about that, and you know we may never have anything like that, and that's cool if we don't, because I really think I've see the niche and the need for it. I see where it's fitting in. Yeah. And it's a great thing. I mean, I call guys all the time to try to get feedback on what do you think, you know, is it going, you know, and again, it's been all positive. So even that one little thing, I wouldn't even call that a negative. It was just, I just the guy had never been to a meeting. So I didn't want his mind getting swayed one way or the other, not having attended a meeting before. Yeah. You know, so that makes sense. Yeah.
All right. So from here, you've got, you know, some time. Are you going to do the whole drop, the whole 5 years?
Still kind of up in the air with that. Okay. You know, I still enjoy the job. I really do. Yeah. I got into a community position again, still a sergeant, but it's a neighborhood. It's an NPO spot. So.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
What side of town?
North.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
North.
Yeah.
So that's like two extremes: the South Side old sector versus what's called Hollywood up there.
Yeah. It's a little slower paced life.
Yeah. And the building itself, I mean, night and day. But they are building a new South division.
That's true. Yeah. Yep. So let's just hypothetically, you do your 5 years in the drop. What's your goals for the mentoring, and what's your goals for your career?
So it's gonna go back to the spiritual side, but for me, it's really goes back to that relationship talk that I've said, and I don't know where, you know, because a guy told me recently, you're a minister now, and I didn't ever really look at it like that. I was like that. I'm just getting guys together and we're just having conversations. So could that mean that I don't do the drop and I do something like that, a discipleship, a ministry, if you will, beyond and after I leave this job? Does my new role as an NPO give me the freedom and ability to meet some people, which it probably will, that are in that realm, and could it lead to something else? Yeah, I mean, I'm just keeping all doors open at this point. I don't know where it's going to lead me. I just know that I will say, because of my relationship again with Christ, I'm in a better position. I feel better internally. And you know, I'm not going to get in. I knew I was going to talk about any of this, but there's been some stuff in my own career that's happened in this last year where if my head wasn't right, I could have been all over the place.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Put your own foot in your mouth or all sorts of things.
All sorts of things. So it's because of this relationship that I now have with our creator that sometimes it feels like I'm flying by the seat of my pants, you know, but this whole, like, the peace and the joy and the happiness and the love, people can do me wrong now. Whereas like we'd sit and have coffee or even adult beverages, my spouse and I, and maybe get on a rant, you know, where we're just feeding off each other.
Yeah.
Now it's like, I like pull the e-brake internally on myself so quick. And it's like, I don't know. All I'm saying is that I feel really good now internally. And I don't know. I mean, but I like not knowing, if that makes sense. I like not knowing where the future leads.
You're comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, and a lot of people will make those that are not right with themselves jealous. A lot of times I found they want to ruin your peace because you have peace. Yeah. Yeah. So, that's why.
I think I'll say this because you said that and it made me think about that something that I recently posted. It just said, sorry, 1 second. Just said, worrying doesn't take away tomorrow's troubles. It takes away today's peace. You know? So I think that's one of the big things is, I want to show guys how you can get peace.
Yeah.
You know, because I think in our profession, it can be robbed and taken from you easily. Yeah.
Yeah. So easily. Yep. You're right. But all right, brother, you got anything else you want to hit on?
No. I hope we get some viewers on it. I mean, it's not probably as entertaining as
a good looking guy like you. It's not going to be hard to get some viewers. We'll get some people on this one, man. Yeah. Especially as many people that look up to you and follow you. I'm sure they will at least get that crowd on there too. So share it around the interwebs. And
all I'll say is, I truly do mean it. If there's anybody that, you know, even out of curiosity, if they want to come to this group, I really believe that they'll get something from it. And even if one of my sisters in this brotherhood would want to join, the door's not shut on anyone, you know, just because it says it's a men's fellowship. I'm encouraging any and everyone to attend. And that even includes civilians. I mean, I wouldn't be against that. You know, I mean, we've got, the doors are open is all I'm saying. Yeah. And if somebody wants to attend, we have it at our POA building. And it's every Wednesday at noon. And we do it the very first Thursday of the month. It's at 10:30 a.m.
Okay.
So,
all right, bro. Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.